And welcome to the Jimmy Daytona Show. I have a recurring guest with me this afternoon, Dana Bullister, who has had a summer in full, traveling all over. In this episode, I'm going to talk about her trip to South America, as well as how she was able to find really good, quick deals on short notice, how she's able to stay safe, how she's able to navigate English versus Spanish, and how she's able to make new friends effortlessly once she's in a new locale. Thank you so much for coming on, Dana.
It's
I'd
an
love to hear
honor.
more about the trip.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I am thrilled to be here in front of the lovely Aurora Borealis, I believe, but also at the CBC. But yeah, I've been doing some great things over the summer while not in my favorite place on planet Earth, which is, of course, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Yeah. Let's see. So I guess I can start off. I spent about 3 months of time or so, maybe 4 months, not leaving my room, just kind of being consumed with work. So I decided that after many months of my skin not seeing any sort of natural lighting, I should go to probably one of the places with the most natural light known to humanity, namely Colombia. So yes, that was awesome. And then later Ecuador. So happy to chat about any of those places or inspire anyone who might want to go there or want to be informed about how best to explore these beautiful and amazing places.
Was this your first trip there?
This is my first trip to all of the places, certainly to Ecuador. I'd been to just Cartagena a little bit in Colombia, but none of the places I visited this time in Colombia. So yes.
So, like, you told me backstage that this trip kind of was like a day's notice.
Yeah.
How did that happen? How'd you score a good deal too? How
Oh,
can the listeners do something similar if they feel cool to do them?
yeah, totally. Right. So I guess I tend to only plan trips like less than 48 hours in advance because I never know if I'll be in the right mood or really know for sure whether I want to go somewhere. So the reason why I can do that affordably is because I don't really care where I go as long as it seems interesting. And also I travel solo, so I don't have to coordinate with anybody. So yeah, I guess I went on Google Flights, and because I don't really care that much about where I go, I can kind of there are fewer factors, fewer restrictions in terms of figuring out, I'll just keep to pick the cheapest nonstop to anywhere. So Google Flights is one of my favorite sites of all time. It turned out there's a trip for $150, I believe, maybe 200 to Santa Marta, which is where my housemate was. So I knew that he was somewhere in Colombia, so I messaged him. I was like, "Where are you?" He said Santa Marta, and it seemed cheap to get there, so I was like, "All right, be there tomorrow." He was like, "What?"
I would imagine 95% of listeners are going to be like, "What?"
Yeah.
But they're also going to be, inspired to be spontaneous, to, figure out some fun stuff they want to do and just do it.
Yeah, hopefully, yes.
Well, what kind of lodging do you prefer to stay in? Like, how do you either keep your costs in check, or have the right amount of luxury, or make sure that you're able to, to do what you need to do safely, when you're in a foreign country.
Yeah, definitely. I think I have a very specific understanding of what safety really means and what a very amazing lodging really means. So when I try and choose a place to stay, I think I'm sort of this person who doesn't care that much about most of about the sort of polish of the amenities. I care that they're there, but I don't really care about being in any sort of luxury hotel. Also with regard to safety, I think that the safest places you can possibly be are places where you have solid connections with people who know what they're doing and can protect you and can tell you what is good, what is safe to do and what is not safe to do. in my view, staying in a very luxury hotel, completely isolated from anyone who actually lives there, is an incredibly unsafe thing to do in certain ways. Assuming you do leave the hotel sometimes, because you don't know anything about this place, right? So the places that I stay are usually in the exact center of whatever cities there are. And I love staying in Airbnbs. And I generally like that because I can be in a private room living in a place with other people who actually live there, and they can tell me where to go and where not to go and how I should probably wear shoes in the in the water on certain beaches, because there are some of those I think the scientific name for them are pin cushions of death in the water. They're these black spiky things, and I think I think they might kill you or at least paralyze you. So yeah, they can tell you about that stuff, which is great.
Yeah, that was going to be the next question. Like, how if you're new to the area, how can you tell, what's safe, what isn't, what's recommended, what isn't? And that answers my question.
Absolutely, yes. I like learning from the people themselves, because meeting people and hearing it straight from them is most of the fun and joy of going to these places.
What's your system like to determine, is this Airbnb good in the first place? Do you look at costs, star ratings? Is there anything that, you might notice that somebody else just randomly checking an Airbnb is not going to notice?
Yeah. So basically, I've been staying in Airbnbs forever. I travel a lot, and I basically, because one of my first jobs that I ever had, I traveled for it. And so I had the flexibility to book wherever I wanted. And so I would always choose Airbnbs. And so because I stayed at so many places over, and had to plan this over and over and over again, I sort of solidified it to this fine art of how do you know the very best places to stay according to my criteria, which is have amazing experiences, meet new people, and be in the very best locations in terms of richness of different sites that you can go to all at once, right? So yeah, I guess my criteria are basically always choose the Airbnbs that are rated 5 stars like 50 million times. And I'm also really, really cheap. So choose the cheapest possible, like the ones that are just outlandishly cheap, as in you start to wonder if there's something wrong, but they're also rated 5 stars a million times, and you read the reviews to make sure that it's legit, right? And what that basically means is you end up staying in the smallest little hole of a room you've ever seen in your entire life, with the best host of all time, who knows everything, who will wait on you hand and foot, who will take you on this amazing tour of the whole city, and that it's going to be a good experience. I mean, the stars speak for themselves, so that's my strategy anyway. Not everybody's, but I've gotten a lot from that.
Yeah, how much do you pack ahead of time, and how do you make sure that you have every last thing you could conceivably need when you go to a foreign locale? Do you travel light? Do you overpack? What's your style in that?
I'm pretty minimalist as a person, so I never ever check any bags. Always carry on. So I basically lived out of a carry-on suitcase for 6 months.
Wow.
5 months. And I swear, a person doesn't need any more than what you can fit in a carry-on if you're smart about it. I mean, well, especially if you go to a tropical place, because you don't need any jackets, right? So you just you can pack just like, got a couple t-shirts, like one pair of shorts, a couple, pants that don't take up that much space, and that's it. And then every single time you go, you get like the smallest version of whatever you might need. Like even my little mouse, like I bring my laptop with me all the time and stuff, right? So I have like the most portable laptop you could possibly that does everything you need it to do. I have like the smallest little mouse, one of these travel mouses, right? But yeah, if you have one of absolutely everything you ever need in your life, it totally fits in a carry-on. You don't need anything more than that. So yeah.
I can learn a lesson or 15 from you. I'm going to Arizona and Vegas in December for a few Patriots games. So
Nice. Yeah, that'd be great.
We'll have to talk shop with you.
Oh,
about that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know much about going to that type of event, but you'll probably know more about that, but I can certainly help you with the travel bits of it.
I've taught in one of my previous episodes, my friend Claire White, we have Patriot Teams vacations, and then we build sightseeing endeavors around it, for what museums, parks, historical sites we want to see, restaurants, breweries, wineries, we've had some fun times together. I'm looking forward to some more within in the late fall.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds like you are already en route to planning an extremely efficient trip. I respect that.
Thank you, Dana. So you started off in Santa Maria. What part of Colombia is that in?
Oh yeah, Santa Marta. So that was a city where my friend Seb happened to be planted. That is on the coast, the northern coast. It's actually not too far from Cartagena. And Santa Marta was, I chose it because my housemate Seb was there, and I figured I would travel with him for a little bit. Yeah, so it's by the water, and it's a major city. I mean, it has everything great about cities, meaning it has a lot of nightlife and a lot of people, and it has the beach, tons of sun. It gets extraordinarily hot during the day. Holy moly, if heat was what I wanted, I got it. But this is why the nighttime was perfect. You could walk along the water, and there's so much to do at night. There's dancing in the street, there's dancing off the street, there's going out to restaurants. The bars are open every single day, 7 days a week, which is incredible. And I'm beginning to sort of understand that I'm not sure if this is causation or not, but a lot of the places that are just absurdly hot during the day have amazing nightlife. And I'm pretty sure it's because you just can't do much during the day. And so people have to come out at night. But I love nightlife. So Santa Marta certainly delivers, and in that respect.
Yeah, what did you like about the nightlife the most? Was it the dancing? Was it the food? Was it being able to just walk along the water and just see probably a beautiful night sky? What immersive experiences, in the nightlife there, could one expect if they were to follow the Santa Marta?
Yeah, well, I like, honestly, Santa Marta is one of these places where you can just walk along the water, and just people watch forever. Because there are so many things going on at one given time. There are these street artists and street performers, and all these open restaurants with people sitting outside, and people walking along outdoor workout areas and playgrounds, kids having the time of their lives by the water, beaches. It's all just compressed into this tiny little area, and it's extremely walkable. So just walking around, I'm happy. And then not really planning anything, just kind of meandering into a restaurant or some kind of club or bar or whatever kind of looks interesting is what I like to do without that much of an itinerary.
What are the beaches like down there in terms of water, sand, rocks, just the vibe? Yeah, how do the beaches down there differ from a beach in the United States?
Yeah, well, the water's warm. Okay, I'm telling you, people of Massachusetts, whenever I go to Cape Cod or any beach really in the Boston area, I'm always just astounded at how the little kids just run into the water and they don't care. That water's frigid most of the time. In Santa Marta, it's much warmer. So I would say that's the biggest difference. And then, yeah, people are a little bit more laid back, I'd say, just culturally. They'll very friendly people. I've almost never gotten a chance to go in the water and not had other people, like other people who are Colombian, other people from wherever, come up to me and just start talking to me. So that's charming, really charming. Yeah.
Yeah. How can you tell a difference? Like if somebody's just talking to you, how can you tell if they're good news or bad news? That's
Oh,
a personal safety deal.
it is a
You're-
personal safety.
You're traveling by yourself. You know, I'm sure, people hitting on you, people may want to harm you. How can you tell whether somebody's a cool cat or not so much?
Yeah, good question. No, safety is the primary concern here, but mainly, again, my definition and what I've found practically in terms of when I feel safe is when I'm with lots of people. I'm always in cities. Be toward the light, toward the people. I never go to places that, well, pretty much never go to places that are known to be dangerous in any way. And the cities I went to in Colombia were not dangerous, any more dangerous than other cities you might go to in the US, right? So staying among crowds of people who look nice, people who, yeah, the only areas where I did not feel safe were areas that I felt isolated from crowds, areas where it was just me and like one or two other people on the street. That did not feel good. So keep among the throngs of people, and of course, sort of practical travel stuff, such as if you have anything that is really valuable, keep it in one of these, what is it? It's not a fanny pack. It's one of these things that basically latches to your body underneath like 3 layers of clothing. I mean, if someone wanted to rob me, they would really have to do a strip search there, but that never happened, thankfully. But yeah, yeah, practical stuff like that.
What kind of unique foods, drinks, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, do they have down there, and what do you like best?
Yeah, so Colombia, I mean, well, Colombia has amazing food. I'll just put that out there. I was on this beach. So I went to a bunch of places, including this island called San Andres, Colombia. And everything in Colombia is very, very cheap, which basically means that probably the fanciest dinners I got or the fanciest food that I got was about like $13 for the whole meal. It's just insane. But I was haggling for the street vendor just for fun for this fish soup thing that has a name that I have since forgotten, but I will have to look up. But holy moly, I mean, it was mind blowing. It had a combination of some type of native fish, plantain, yuca, and coconut milk, and a bunch of spices mixed together. And it was out of this world. So do not underestimate the food of Colombia. They know exactly what they're doing. Yeah, drinks. I mean, I don't actually, I don't usually, ever drink alcoholic beverages, but the drinks there looked very nice. They looked extremely creative and wonderful. And yeah, but they will be able to cater to your every need. I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, I remember reading in your Medium article there. You said absolutely, positively, do not get intoxicated when you're out of town.
Yeah, that's me being extremely on the edge of paranoid. Whenever I travel, well, I generally, as a person, even not traveling, I don't do that anyway. But one of the things that I've noticed about episodes where things go really, really wrong is you combine at least 3 different factors that put you in a situation of very intense vulnerability. One of which may be that you're intoxicated, and it's not good when you're in a place where you don't feel safe to begin with. So that's just one tip that I take into account when I'm traveling.
Yeah, great safety tip for our audience. Tell me more about San Andreas Island. How far did you have to travel from Santa Marta to get there?
Yeah, so it's about, I believe, an hour or an hour and a half by plane nonstop to San Andres. I was in Santa Marta, and so I was hanging out there, and I was kind of absentmindedly looking at the different flight destinations I could go from there. And I believe it was $30 to buy a ticket to San Andres. I was like, all right, I'm there.
Yeah, that doesn't blow your budget. Wow, that's great. What was San Andreas like? What are the main, hits and highlights of staying there? What can one expect?
Yeah, well, San Andres is great. It's very safe. It feels very safe, and it has basically paradise beaches and the most amazing fish-based food you will ever have in your entire life. People there are very nice. There is this interesting mix of people who are Colombian, from mainland Colombia. Well, it's charming in that I didn't really meet any other Americans while I was there, or it was mainly people who traveled from mainland Colombia. I mean, as a Bostonian, I would say that San Andres is kind of like the Cape of mainland Colombia. And so it was filled with lots of mainland Colombian folks. Everyone spoke Spanish, and it would have been very, very hard if I did not speak any Spanish to survive there. But there were some folks who spoke Creole, who were sort of these more native islander populations. And it was interesting seeing some of the mix of cultures that were there. And a lot of the kind of minority populations had very distinctive and very wonderful food, and kind of set up. You definitely had a presence there. And the only times when I spoke English were when I was actually interacting with these Creole folks who actually preferred to speak English over Spanish, which was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of food did they cook that you were really smitten with?
Oh, well, let's see. There was lots of rice, lots of kind of pastries. There were these amazing Caribbean cakes of various types. There was like pineapple tarts and all of these kind of fruit-based desserts, which were amazing. Lots of meats, all different types of meats: pork, fish, chicken, prepared with tons of spices and in all these very distinctive ways. It was almost overwhelming how great it was. I was thinking I was going to try to go vegetarian or something there. That is not the place to do it. I'm going to tell you that right there. Like no, later. So yeah.
What kind of spices were you able to notice in the food? Anything that stood out?
I can only assume they were made of magic. I have no idea what these things were, but it was the mix together of meat, the broth, lots of coconut-based broth, coconut milk, and I couldn't say, but whoever put this together had some sort of magical intuition, because I actually discovered my favorite dish on planet Earth while I was on the island of San Andres. It was this mind-blowing soup. I've never in my life tasted anything better than that. That's it. Like not dessert, not anything.
Well, best food of all time.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. What else did you do in San Andres?
I was there for just a few days. That was kind of one leg of my Colombia trip. I basically went to Santa Marta, then stayed in at San Andres just a few days. Went swimming, went scuba diving, met up with these. Speaking of figuring out which ones are the good apples to hang out with, I met this adorable pair, a mother and a son in San Andres, and ended up kind of doing some activities with them over a few days, and they were just the sweetest folks ever. And I mean, the mother could have been like my mother. She was just so sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, typical stuff on the island. There's lots of ocean-based stuff.
What was the swimming and the scuba diving like?
Oh, you could see every fish every color of the rainbow in that water. It was if you want to go to a paradise island where you're not going to see any Americans and have you get to witness lots of iguanas, lots of fish, crabs, and tons of great scuba diving in water that is much warmer than in Boston, then San Andreas is where to go, especially if you speak Spanish. That is a great place to practice.
Yeah. How good is your Spanish?
A lot better than when I first went.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Well done, Dana.
It's fun. Yeah.
Well, where to now?
Where to now? I mean, I think I'm gonna plant myself here for a little bit since I'm starting a graduate program here. So this was sort of my summer of trying to squish lots of as much traveling as possible into the shortest amount of time to make up for a large span of time that was very stressful and involved a lot of work.
Well, that's a good way to that's a great way to distress and a little bit of an interlude. Like, what was your next stop after San Andreas?
Yeah, so let's see. I went let's see, I think I actually went from there. I had this little episode where I stopped hearing out of my right ear while I was traveling.
Oh, wow.
So I figured I should figure that out. I really do like hearing out of my right ear. So I tried to, figure that out, got some stuff to try and unclog it, but I had to actually go for a very short time back to Boston. Turned out it was nothing. It was just, they declogged it a bit. I don't know.
Wow.
Anyway, so Boston, and then I was hanging out. I went back to Armenia. So not Armenia, but Armenia, which is a city in Colombia. Hung out, hung out with Seb a bit more and some friends there. Did some mud baths and in the natural and also swam in these natural hot springs, which was great. And after that, I decided that since I was in South America, there was no way that I couldn't explore another country. And so, true to form, I looked, and the cheapest flight ever was to Ecuador.
Nice.
And so that was and then I realized it said on Google Flights that if I go to either Quito or Guayaquil, two cities in Ecuador, if I go to either one of them, I can take a nonstop flight to the Galapagos for $99.
Nice.
$99. I mean, one of my friends' families went to the Galapagos back when I was in high school, and everyone sort of assumed that they were just rich and it was this enormous expense to get there. And when I saw it was $99, I figured I needed to go. I mean, yeah. So I went there and it turns out that the $99 is the local Ecuadorian price. Of course, they don't tell you that till they get to the airport. You get to the airport and you say, all right, got my ticket, got my passport, all good. And then they say, oh, are you an Ecuadorian citizen? And I was like, I think you know the answer to that. I already put my passport information in there. You know I'm American. And they're like, okay, well, it's an extra $150. So I was like, you know what? I'll put down another $150 for one reason only. The Galapagos tortoise was the inspiration for E.T. The face of this charismatic Galapagos tortoise was the inspiration for E.T. And I will not go through my life without seeing the charming and charismatic presence of this wonderful being. So I was like, you know what? This is worth it.
Now you can die in peace, Dana.
Now I can. Yes. So that's where I went there. But yeah, it's not that expensive to get to, as expensive as you might think to get to the Galapagos if you fly. I know a lot of people take cruises and stuff for thousands of dollars. I don't know. Nah, just fly.
Google that. So what else did you find in the Galapagos? It's got a lot of historical significance in terms of geology, in terms of where Darwin developed some of his theories. What else do you experience during your time in the Galapagos?
Well, the Galapagos Islands definitely constitute one of the most unique places I have ever traveled to. The folks who go to the Galapagos come from all over the world, every place you can imagine. And a lot of them come to the Galapagos because they're interested in nature. I knew a lot of biologists, biology folks who showed up there, and the Galapagos is known for being the place that Darwin went to and that inspired his Origin of Species. And the reason is because there are multiple islands in the Galapagos, and each one is sort of semi-isolated from the others. And so the creatures, the species that live on each island can evolve very rapidly over just a few generations in response to the different environments of each of those islands. And so you can actually, so Darwin actually studied finches mainly because the, the lifespan of a finch isn't that long. So you can observe lots of different generations of finches as they evolve different attributes, right? So anyway, the Darwin's finches are on the Galapagos, and people on the Galapagos Islands, there's a very big tourist industry, and that industry is the main reason that the Galapagos is most likely has been preserved so well. Only 3% of the land area on the Galapagos is actually populated by people. I think the total permanent population of people who live on the Galapagos full time is about 25,000, but 3% is designated as where people can live, and then the rest of the 97% is national park. And so there are very strict laws about how you are not allowed, as a tourist, you're not allowed to be within 1 meter of any large animal that you'll find there. And tourists are extremely good and respectful of these. And so the wildlife that you see on the Galapagos are probably some of the only wildlife you will ever meet that is not in any way afraid or irritated by people.
Wow.
It's absolutely amazing. You go there and the animals just live among the people. There is, and like large animals, right? Probably the most frequent large animal that you'll see on the Galapagos are these giant sea lions, and they're big. I mean, they're as big as people, and they lay on all the public benches, right? You can't even sit down, and of course, no one is going to go near them because you're legally not allowed to. But they'll just be there. They'll look at you. They're not afraid. They'll roll off if they want to, but they won't leave room for you on these benches. Yeah, and there are these enormous turtles. Just the turtles, I would say, of the Galapagos, they're not as commonly seen as the sea lions. I would say the turtles of the Galapagos are sort of like the turkeys of Boston, right? You don't see turkeys all the time, but they're there. Now you'll see them just strutting their stuff down the street. So same thing with the turtles, except the turtles don't like everything. The turtles and every other creature in the Galapagos look terrifying. They're enormous. They're like really large, and yet they don't hurt people at all. I mean, the turtles, they eat the grass. That's all they do. They don't even eat meat, and they won't hurt you. They're not the snapping turtle. They won't do anything. The seals, they won't hurt you either. It's such a blissful place to be, and it is absolutely fascinating just seeing all the stuff happen in front of your eyes.
A foretaste of heaven. What other unique wildlife did you see there?
Yeah, so probably, of course, top of the list is Galapagos tortoise. Yeah. When I said turtle, I meant tortoise. Tortoise is the land variety of turtles. The Galapagos tortoise, they were amazing to see. And then probably the next most awesome creatures, I would say, were some of the land iguanas. They have these land iguanas, and they're all black. They look like sinister beasts. Okay, I'm telling you, they have these spiky black things on their head, and they look like they will kill something or someone, but they don't do anything. They just chill out. They eat bugs, but they look really, really terrifying. Yeah, they have sharks too there. The sharks, they look also very terrifying. They're like right under, even the shallow water is filled with sharks, and none of them hurt people.
Wow.
They don't bite people, so people just swim up with the sharks and it's fine. It's the weirdest place I've ever been.
Yeah, it's like a foretaste of heaven. What was the what did the parks look like in terms of vegetation, in terms of rocks, greenery, sand, etc.? What did it look like?
Yeah. So mainly I stayed within I stayed within the more populous part of Santa Cruz Island, which is one of the islands there. And so that's sort of the populated part. The real island where I went hiking and everything is extremely diverse in its vegetation. There's a lot of more desert-like areas that are very dry, kind of dusty, very rocky. And there's a lot of tropical plant life, vegetation, trees, but very kind of dry and desert, like tons of iguanas. Yeah, and then of course by the water, it's beachy and perfect temperature. I can't conceive of a better place to go with your family. These islands, it was crazy because I actually went from Guayaquil, Ecuador, to go nonstop to Galapagos Islands, right? Guayaquil is not the safest place. That's probably the least safe place that I visited during my travels. And then I took an hour and a half flight to the Galapagos. You get there, and the Galapagos is probably one of the single safest places you could be on the earth. I mean, everyone it's just so small and familial, and people would just tell me all the time, why you bring your bag with you? Just leave it on the beach, like everyone else is doing. And I realized it's kind of this, people come with their families, their kids are running around, they're having a good time. People are leaving their stuff every which way.
Yeah, I'm from New York. I'm a lot less trusted.
Yes.
How long did you spend in Galapagos?
I was gonna spend about a few days. I ended up spending 2 weeks there because they were so good. They were, I mean, the beach is paradise and completely, I went to one of the other islands that was great. Isabella. Yeah. And I mean, the beaches are the best I've ever seen in my life. And Isabella is charming. That's the reason why I stayed for 2 weeks, because I got there and I mean, these families live on Isabella Island for generations. And it's this very, very kind of isolated place. They have to import all their fresh water. There is exactly one ATM on the entire island. Okay. There are no movie theaters. There are no malls. There are only the best restaurants you have ever seen, you've ever experienced in your life. They're all owned by these local families, and they're all local businesses. I don't think I saw many big chains. It's this really provincial, beautiful place. And there were times when I just thought I could live here forever.
I don't doubt it. It's like I don't want. It's like I don't want to go home. So, what was the food like there in Galapagos and Isabella?
Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. So the Galapagos is really distinctive because it has certain certain fish, for example, that you can only get fresh there because they only exist by the Galapagos, at least in their varieties. There's this dish called brujo, which was a type of fish, and it is very well prepared. I ended up meeting someone at the Galapagos, making friends with them, who was a chef. So I ended up having a lot of very fine dishes. So kind of similar, but they have squid, they have fish, they have langosta, which I guess is in the Galapagos, they apply that label to this creature that is like a lobster, but massive.
Wow.
It looks kind of like you're eating some alien that's busted out of someone's stomach, but it is delicious. Let me tell you, it's amazing. Yeah, and the little family-owned stores on Isabella are charming because they don't really have hours as far as I understood. They just open when they want to and the family's there. But because there are a gajillion restaurants, there's always something. So, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I know you spend some time in the mainland. I even saw the picture of you sitting on the equator. What was that experience like? How was Quito and wherever else you went in Ecuador?
Quito was great. I decided, if I was going to Ecuador, I might as well plant my butt on the equator, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was great. Quito's a bigger city. I would say the thing that struck me, at least most at first about Quito, is that it's based in these crazy large mountains and giant cliffs. The entire city is just spread among this incredibly mountainous region. And what that means is you can kind of be on one of these places in Quito and then look across this giant ravine, this giant cliff, and see the entire rest of this enormous city spread out among this mountain that's above you somehow. The whole scale of the place is mind bending. Yeah. I always like comparing the skylines of various places where I go, and Quito's is hard to beat.
Yeah, what was unique about the skyline? Just the sunsets, how much or how little in the way of clouds there were because you're fairly high up.
Yeah, it is pretty high up, which meant that it was sort of chillier in Quito, which is weird because it's on the equator, right? But temperature is it's both about latitude and altitude. So because Quito is kind of higher up, it's chilly, and people there like to say that you get all 4 seasons within one day, which I found to be entirely correct.
Yes. Changes in altitudes, changes in attitudes, to paraphrase Jimmy Buffett.
Ah, yes, exactly. Yeah, but the people that I would meet in Ecuador were really diverse and interesting. I remember when I was kind of strutting around Guayaquil for a bit, and some of the people I met there were folks from other parts of Ecuador who were finding work. There was one person, there are a lot of kind of younger kids who come to big cities like Guayaquil and I think Quito for work. And I remember one of them was basically a refugee from Venezuela, and they get some Venezuelans there as well. And it's it gave some insight into the tragedies that really are happening in those regions of the world. And you get a lot of different stories when you travel to South America, and a lot of very unique perspectives.
Yeah, I'm friends with a few Venezuelans, one in New York City, one in Miami, and they've told me their experiences about what's gone down in that country the decades.
Yeah.
And what other stops did you make on this eat, pray, love-esque vacation of yours?
Yeah, well, I'd say it wasn't quite eat, pray, love sort of thing. It was more like a wild joy ride that I needed to take in order to compress 3 years of fun into a span of just a few weeks here and there. But it was yeah, let's see. I would say Galapagos, Ecuador were probably some of my most favorite places to visit, as well as many places in Colombia. I did some more upper North American visitations. I went to Montreal for a little bit, which I have to say, after visiting tons of Latin American countries or sort of Caribbean countries, it's so weird to be in a foreign place that has very well insulated buildings. I got there like, what is this? Oh, right. And there are even tunnels under the ground so that you can get to places in the middle of the winter.
Wow.
So yeah, it added variety, I have to say.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, and one of the things you've told me is that one of the most rewarding things of taking this South American trip is the new friends and connections you met. You know, what was the most rewarding part of that whole process?
Yeah, I got to meet so many wonderful people there. One of the reasons why I like traveling solo is because it forces me to continually be interacting with new people. I'm basically constantly chatting with people all day, and every single person I talk to is someone who is new, who I don't know. And so it's amazing. The perfect day in many of these places is, for example, going around in Montreal and having no very structured plan per se, but then kind of running into some person in a coffee shop and ending up just talking till 3 a.m. about anything, about the state of affairs in Canada, about some of the current policies that are being considered, or how much of their media must be in French and must be not. I mean, stuff that I would never ordinarily think about, just because I haven't been there. But those, I think, are the most treasured moments where you just run into someone, whether they're some Venezuelan refugee, and just say, what is that like? Do you feel safe here? Do you feel safe there? What is your situation? What is your experience? And that's truly the best part of it. So I think that was definitely central to all of the experiences that I got to have there.
I am so delighted that you shared your experiences. I suspect since you make a lot of game time decisions, I may not know the answer to this question, but where are you fixing to go next?
Well, I'm gonna be staying here in Boston for a little bit. It's possible I'll do more local things, such as go to Maine, see Bar Harbor. I have never been in my entire life, and the first time I heard of it, I was interning at a pastry chef place when I was in high school, and I kept hearing how great this place called Bahama was. Turned out the person is just Bostonian, and so they called it Bahama. I thought it was some sort of Caribbean, like Bahama, like somewhere in I don't know, but it's Bar Harbor. Not really, it's Bar Harbor. So I might visit there, and yeah, and maybe I don't know. I'll see for Christmas break where I might go. I it's funny just the way different people live their lives differently, I think. And some people come and ask me, or they're surprised that I live in a place with housemates or something like that, or that I'm so cheap about what I buy on a daily basis, and ask me things like, "Oh, are you poor? Like, what is it?" And then I go on these wild joyride things, and they're like, are you rich? You know what? It's like it's hard to make those connections sometimes, but I think it's important when thinking about how one can live their life that there are so many possibilities, and one is not necessarily better or worse than the other. But the thing is, if there's a dream that someone has to go see some corner of the world that they haven't experienced yet, probably I mean, there's a lot of times a way to do it. And these experiences, they're not nothing. They're not a waste of time, because I think they really do shift your perspective on what's important and what you want to study about the world going forward. So I encourage people to explore when they can.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming on the Jimmy Daytona Show, Dana. I'm so appreciative to have you once again. And I know that my listeners are going to be very inspired by how you made a game time decision, to go to South America and built a trip that is going to give you memories to last a lifetime. And then some.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Appreciate it.